Hey there, it is Rapmark here.
And Firedragonfly.
And yes, you make a return.
I make a return, yes, indeed.
So yes, she'll be here when she can, but it is she just because of her health.
Yeah.
She probably won't be as regular as she used to be.
We're hoping so, but
Yes.
we will definitely see.
Yes, and the casual houseplant could not make it today. It was a crazy week. They had other plans, filming other stuff, so it's going to be us two today.
Yeah.
All right. So what did we review today? We did Abominable.
Abominable.
Yeah. One of those words I will constantly just always say wrong.
No worries.
But yeah, I actually really loved this one.
I did too.
Like I thought it was like I knew from the trailer it was going to be cute. And I thought it'd just be more of the same. What you come to expect from these animated films, and in some ways it was, especially toward the beginning.
Yeah.
But everything just went together so well for it. Like I love the beginning. Like what was that song in the beginning? Girls Gotta Do It. Something like that. Gotta do what you gotta do. Something like that. I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But no, like there were only a few songs, and most of the rest of it was just like instrumental,
yes.
Yeah, I actually really loved it, and I loved the incorporation of like the violin.
I definitely
like it played such a big theme in it.
Yes.
And it kind of works out because it's based in China.
Yeah. And it definitely was awesome. The parts where the violin came in definitely was just very awesome. I really love the violin myself, and just sound everything when it comes together. It's just beautiful and awesome.
Oh yeah, and like another thing I really enjoyed were like the backdrops.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say the characters didn't look good. I thought they looked good. But I mean, at this point, CGI is getting to the point where it's kind of like plateauing off for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the thing I really noticed though was how good all of the backgrounds looked.
Yeah, everything was just awesome.
It really brought like freaking mountain paths.
Yeah.
The rice fields, the river, like it was just so beautiful.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
And I liked a lot of the effects. Trying not to go into spoilers, but there's one where essentially like a field of flowers gets turned into almost like a ocean wave. It looked super cool. Yeah. Like I was impressed with it. And there are a lot of other.
There's a lot of interesting things that did happen. That's for sure. Yes, and they all just when they came together, the further into the journey, and of course the movie, it just was even more amazing.
Yeah, another thing I really loved was like the Yeti's power, which again I'm not going to go into, but
Indeed.
every time I saw it, I'm just like, that is actually really cool. Indeed. Like it's hard to explain without spoiling, but yeah. But no, I absolutely loved the way they made everything just sort of mesh together.
I did too.
What did you think about the characters?
The characters, I mean, definitely, starting off, it definitely felt a little bit more cliche when it came to a lot of the characters, too.
Yeah, they did start off very, like they had a role, you had the pretty boy, the angsty girl, which, I mean, it makes sense when you realize that, what's been going on with her life. But I mean, the little kid who has big dreams and is, kind of runs at 1,000,000 miles per hour at all times.
Indeed.
But I mean, they all grew during the story, like everyone, even like the old man where it starts off at.
Mm-hmm.
Like you think he's gonna be the bad guy, and like I'm not gonna get into it, but like even he has a growth arc, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely true.
And I was actually impressed. Like they actually made them from like characters to actual like almost people.
People. very likable when it came to the majority of
very likable. And one thing I will say about it is, again, at the beginning, you know, it was kind of cliched.
Yes.
And it was the pacing was really weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get what they were trying to do, but it just kind of threw me off the way it started.
Yeah, the way it started it was.
And then it went into a slow burn all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was really weird at first how it started. I was kind of like, what the heck is happening here? Yeah,
but that fortunately didn't last
thankfully not
too long. Like, I'd probably say within 15, 20 minutes, like, the story started going again, and then it kept a good pace for pretty much almost all of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's definitely good for me, because it just made it that much better. And then, of course, it had a lot of parts that still were very funny and kind of made it even more fun to watch. That's for sure, too.
Yeah, like, we'll get into those, obviously, in the spoilers, but, I mean, yeah, there's really not much else to say about this. I mean, it was a good story, you know, it's not anything you haven't already seen in terms of, like, animated features. Sure. I mean, story-wise. Yeah. I mean, it is very good looking. It is very beautiful. Yeah. But, you know, it's the hero's journey kind of thing. Exactly. Like, you kind of get it. It has different themes, but, you know, you kind of know what the beats are, and you have a pretty good grip of where the story's going. Mm-hmm. It's just literally the pacing in the beginning was the only thing that I really took exception to.
I definitely would agree with that. And again, everything, because of how beautiful with everything coming together, and especially with the music that they chose and just the instrumental with everything else, I think it just made it a great film.
Yeah, I'd agree. So let's go into our. Well, first of all, before we go into our final verdicts, I'm sorry. Let's go into what did you think about the actors? Like, I liked how they used a lot of, you know, ethnic actors. I mean, there were some obviously, you know, white characters, but for the most part, I think they did a good job. I loved all their performances. I don't think they sounded engaged. It sounded like, once again, it was, I don't know, what did you think of their performances?
No, I mean, truly, to be honest, I mean, myself, I really felt like, I mean, just with everybody's performance, the way that they were, I mean, even though, yes, I was watching a film about it, I mean, I felt like, and of course it was animated, but I felt like I could have been there in that moment, technically, and actually experiencing this, and it's a real life type thing that these people are actually living, kind of annoying coming off, truly, to be honest.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much our review section of this. Let's go right into our scores. No, scores.
Oh, scores first.
So, what do you give this movie and why?
Myself, I actually gave it an 8 myself. I mean, I still think it's an amazing movie and that. I mean, I did have some problems at the very beginning. It did, yes, come off a little slow at the very beginning, and it was a little weird at first, but I mean, when everything came together, it was just amazing, and I loved it.
Yeah. So, I also went with an 8. Like that, and this was actually a good, like, and you also have to consider that since It Chapter 2 came out, there hasn't been there was like 2 weeks, what was that, 2-3 weeks, where there was like barely any like noticeable films. It was pretty dead. Mm-hmm. And so this, I think, was the first where we're now starting to get into the holiday season, obviously Halloween, Thanksgiving, you know, Christmas stuff, where a lot more known movies are going to come out, a lot more event type movies, you know, people are looking forward to. Yeah. You know, so I mean, pretty much this is a movie I definitely see. Go see this movie. This is a cute, lovable movie. I mean, it has some pacing issues at the beginning. The character's a little bit cliched at the beginning. Yeah. But I mean, all in all, it all comes together. It's a beautiful story with beautiful characters and beautiful scenery.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it'd be definitely fun, of course, for kids and of course anybody really to see. I would definitely, of course, take your kids to it. It's a good family film.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, my score 8 out of 10. Go see this movie.
8 out of 10 as well for me.
Indeed. All right. Well, we will be back in a bit with the spoilers of the film. All right. Anyway, we will see you here in a bit. All right, so we are back. Let's break into this.
Good.
So the pacing issues I had with it, stem from the very beginning. It goes into he's already captured. And then he escapes, and that's pretty much how it starts. Like it shows kind of a little bit of his power, but it's it's not really defined like what really caused it. Like he escapes by knocking out all the lights, and then he jumps over the electric fence. He knocks out the power essentially
by summoning pretty much a lightning storm.
Yeah, and that's where you meet who you think is going to be the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Burnish. Yeah, Burnish. And he's all about finding proof that he actually found this Yeti, that he actually saw it, because everyone laughed at him when he brought it up at first.
Yes, and so he wanted to have a Yeti of his own so he can show everybody that he was not lying, and he can get that away from, of course, the way he was treated pretty much since then.
Yeah, and I mean, he seems all about it, and so yeah, you think he's going to be just, he's just this rich guy who wants to, live out this last glory,
mm-hmm.
And then also, the doctor.
I mean, technically, and also collecting very rare, just unique creatures as well with the old guy.
That was also like, it was funny, but it was just like, why is this here? Like, so there's this, apparently, this rare snake, a whoop snake, and they just going whoop.
A whooping snake.
Like, I thought it was going to actually play some part in it, but no, it was just literally this runaway gag that never went anywhere. It barely even made any appearances.
It was funny, because at first...
But it made enough to where it's just like, why is it, like, this has to be something, right?
Yeah, but it was funny, though, when it first came in and they actually showed you, of course, the whooping snake there first. There was a bunch of them in the little casing that they were in, and they had little holes in the top. And then all of a sudden you see them popping up like almost one at a time. And myself, I'm like, oh, yay, let's play whack-a-mole here, kind of in a way.
That's what he was doing. He did a whack-a-mole scene, and it was super weird.
And then one of them escaped. And
yeah.
you do see that it kind of follows along in the story in a couple of spots, which is
but
it's still funny.
Again, it's just like, why? Like it didn't even do anything. Like literally, it was just there. I don't know. It had its funny moments, and I don't think they overplayed it.
No.
But it was just like, why are you here?
Indeed.
And so all right. So from the beginning, it goes into then, this family scene. You see hear about Yi, who is this girl. At first, she comes off, very like she's doing all these jobs, and of course the first song of the movie, which was insanely good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just like she's doing all these jobs. But she's apparently like avoiding her family, and like you get the whole like angsty teenager feel. I mean, you do learn a little bit about it later. I mean, her dad apparently like died before they could take their trip all over China, and she learned how to play violin from him. She has his old violin, and she goes to the roof of her apartment and plays it like every night. She doesn't even play it for her family. Like she's really, really distant.
Yeah, according to her, she actually sold her violin.
Well, she just told
itself. Well, she told
well,
her
I
family later
don't know
on.
if she had one and she actually did sell hers. Like
Well,
that,
they
I don't
wanted
know.
her to play for them, of course, after a mill, and she said she had sold the violin. She doesn't have it.
Yeah, so I don't know if
Later on.
if she had her own. I imagine she had her own if her father taught her violin. So maybe that was a real thing.
It's
So
either that or, again, he just showed her how to play with his, and she just got his in the end.
yeah.
So either way,
yeah,
but still,
whatever. Moving on. The point is, she doesn't, play for anyone except for herself at this point.
Yeah.
Is the point?
And then, I mean, technically, I mean, you find out. I mean, she's got that little area set up. You see, there's a map, of course, of China that's in there. All the money that she's been collecting for all the weird jobs that she's been doing, she's storing that up because she wants to use that to travel, of course, all over China and actually take that trip that she wanted to go on with her father but never got a chance.
Yeah, so I mean, she's probably the most human, but I mean, she's still like, what part she plays.
Yeah.
You also meet her neighbors. You have Peng. He's a small little boy who wants to play basketball. He wants to be a basketball star. He's always asking people to play him in basketball.
Indeed.
And he runs at 1,000,000 miles per hour the whole time. Your typical run-of-the-mill little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Jin, who's
the pretty boy.
Yeah, if you know anything about Asian culture, it's just he is the stereotypical I look good, I'm rich, let's do this. He's going to university, buys the newest pair of shoes, looks all prepped, is all about social media.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he was. I was just oh God, is this going to be one of those movies? And I was really afraid it was going to be one of those movies where it's just they're just cliche and they're suddenly brought together. And again, it starts that way. I said, that the starting is a little bit of a slow burner, but it doesn't last too long. It's something that you could definitely move past, and kids could probably move past as well.
Yeah.
It's 15, 20 minutes, and then the journey begins.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, she finds this Yeti while there's the helicopter searching for him from the...
Mm-hmm. And it's on her rooftop there. It's kind of hidden in a little area, not right where she is, just a little behind her, and where she didn't notice it.
Yeah, and he's injured.
Mm-hmm.
He's scared. He doesn't know what to do. He just wants to get home.
Yes.
And you find out later that, as huge as he is, he's just a kid.
Yes.
He's probably about the same age as Pang, who I'm going to say is somewhere between 6 and 8.
Probably. I could see that.
Yeah, so very small, and it shows, he's very confused. It does a good job of not, implying that it gets, people speak.
Mm-hmm.
It does a little bit at the end, but, I can kind of forgive it at that point.
Sure.
But, it makes it very clear this is a wild animal. It does not understand it. It's a smart animal, but you have to sort of gimmick things, sign things,
mm-hmm.
for it to actually understand. And I like that they incorporated that very much so.
I do.
It made it seem more real.
More real, yes. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed that too. And because he was injured too, he didn't want her to, of course, touch her. He was really scared and kind of came off as just a little I am vicious kind of in a way. Please stop, go away, get away from me, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it was nice because you do see, after that whole scene, because, at the time, technically, she also dropped the violin because she was playing the violin at the time. She ended up getting the violin back and everything, and then after the whole scene was over, the helicopter, the people looking for him, of course, flew off, and then she realized that he is just a scared animal, technically. He does need help because she did notice, of course, the injury on his leg, and so she ends up taking some of the money that she had been saving up for her trip.
Yeah, and she buys medicines and
stuff, wrappings and stuff to help him.
Yeah, and a really quick healing.
Yes.
You know, that's one of those suspension of disbeliefs,
Yes.
which I can kind of get behind. I mean, they needed to get the movie. Like, it's not a long movie at all. It's
No.
only about an hour and a half, so they had a lot of beats to get there, and it didn't seem like it was an hour and a half long movie. It almost seemed like it was a 2-hour movie. Like, not in the bad way, not in the long, drawn out kind of way, but just that there was so much like happening. But it was done in such a well that I always felt engaged.
Indeed.
So starting from Jin goes up there because he apparently steals the air conditioning.
The air conditioning.
And so he sees this thing. He calls the cops. It alerts the people who are looking for him. And so they have to at this point escape. And so he grabs her because she's his only friend. And he's a kid. Like, honestly, he making that journey by himself is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
When you realize it, none of them realize it at the time, but no, like it later comes out that he's just young. His parents are ginormous. Yes, but yeah.
Yes, and they realize or she definitely realized, of course, at that time, that yes, he's just trying to get home, and where home is actually on
Mount Everest.
And so that's where they come up with, of course, calling him Everest. But the reason they were able to figure that out as well is, I mean, there was a huge billboard sign that you can see from her apartment building top there on the roof that was showing Everest. And just within talking kind of and trying to communicate with him in their own way, or her own way, I should say, they were able to confirm that that's where he needed to go back to. And so
and
led towards their journey, trying to escape though.
Yeah, and going back, like, she plays her violin for him because he's like in pain and wanting to cry, and so she plays her violin, and his power comes out again, and what it is it's like this glow that emanates from his body, goes through his hair, and it just causes these amazing things to happen. Like, it caused a dying flower, I think it was an orchid, wasn't it?
It was an orchid, yes.
Yeah, an orchid to come back to life. Yeah. And grow, and it was, she was just like
wow.
but yeah, but it's just like, no, couldn't be. Yeah. So yeah, that was another show of his power. So moving on from there, so they go to this chase through the city. I mean, he's going from rooftops, jumping all over the place. Yeah, and
then you see
Jin is just like panicking. He's just like, he kidnapped her. And so him and his cousin Pang, like they're cousins.
Yes.
And they run after her. He steals a motorbike from a couple of girls who apparently like him. Yeah, total pretty boy. I'm just
pink,
like,
motorbike, and then cute little helmets. One is like a unicorn.
One's a cat.
It was funny.
Yeah, and so they go to this like they're close to the docks, and there's this building that they finally corner the Yeti on. But it's about 8 o'clock, which is about when the light show comes on. So it comes up, it's this huge big thing. It like blinds everyone at first, and they just go poof, like, where'd they go? And then you see them running toward the ship on the dock, and yeah, so she's at first just going to send him on his way, go home, and that's that. And then she realizes that she can't do that.
No. And then of course, Jin
and Pang jumps first because he's just like, adventure.
I was going to say, they follow them to the docks, and then, but yeah, she at first gets him on there, and then you kind of see on the boat, anyways. But you see this look in his eyes and everything. He looks just very sad and just like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? That's when she decides that she can't do it. She can't just leave him to go. So that's when she runs and is able to make it onto the ship. And then, of course, after that, that's when Pang comes in. And he's just like, yeah, no, I'm going to be going here. I'm definitely on this adventure here. And he just takes off and runs. And he's able to make it onto the ship as well, also thanks to Everest, as they call him.
Yeah, and then Jin makes it on. He gets his new shoes dirty. Like, I'm really glad that they really, the arcs kind of didn't, so that didn't become a running joke. Like, I'm glad that they went from being caricatures to real people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they go in there, and the old man, he's still all about him. You still think he's like totally evil. He's talking all this crap about this zoologist and her little animal.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go to find them in this huge convoy of trucks. So later on, they get off of the docks and they're moving on from a truck, but they've drank so much soda at this point that the Yeti and Pang have to go pee, so they knock it off, and it just rolling down the hill. Yeah. And then one of the most beautiful things happened of the movie, and that was the whole blueberry scene.
The blueberry scene.
It was
definitely an interesting scene, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was funny. Like, they're just like, I'm so hungry. And so he does this thing where he,
of course, again, or Everest.
Yeah, he sort of gets down and he makes this humming noise, is I guess the best way of describing it.
Using his Yeti powers again
and he grows a whole bunch of blueberries. The problem is that they don't stop growing.
They just keep growing and growing.
And then soon they're just popping everywhere and they're exploding
everywhere, and they have to take off running to escape the blueberries being shot everywhere.
And it was a nice element of like just comic relief.
Yeah. And of course you have the moment there where Jin gets hit with the blueberry and is freaking out about his clothing, and of course there in the way he looks now because of the blueberry hitting him. That was huge. It was just like, okay, yep. Pretty boy.
Indeed. Yeah, so then, they find out, and then here's where you first start to see, like, maybe the old man isn't as bad as he seems. Like, he goes out, and it's just like, I haven't been outside in ages. Like, and he's almost, like, listful about it. And it's just like, this was, like, it was a bit of a flip, but it was a nice flip, in my opinion. And then he compliments the little rat, and it was so. And then you go back to the group, the Yeti, and the three people, and she, like, they haven't quite bonded yet. Like, Jin is all about going home, whereas he wants to take it back. Pang wants to follow her because, again, adventure, little kid. Yes. And it just caused a lot of tensions, and eventually they get to the point to where Jin finally is just like, all right, I will go with you here. Yeah. He kind of realizes that, maybe he's being a pretentious ass. And he kind of was.
Yeah, dude. And they were using, because of course the idea of their families weren't, and wondering where the heck they were, brought up the idea that he's visiting different, of course, universities or colleges at that point. Just checking them out, or checking out one. I think they were supposed to be in Beijing.
Beijing, yeah, University of Beijing.
Looking at that, and so all of them were technically there with him, so that families wouldn't worry too much that they were gone.
Yeah, and so he really went to bat. And so the next leg of their journey takes them to this sort of mountain path. At this point, the company for Burnish, like, they're still following, but they don't know exactly where they are yet. But they finally catch up with them at this mountain path, and it's just so beautiful. Like, when you go, like, there are these paths in Southeast Asia that literally just go through the mountains. They've been carved. Then they've been there for centuries, and it's just so beautiful. I mean, I wanted to go there again. It's made me want to travel to Asia all over again. Gas bubble.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, they catch up with them there. A whole bunch of drones. It's a nice big drone scene. So in order to escape Everest, he uses his powers and blows up one of these dandelions. I was gonna say daffodil. I'm just like, that's not right.
This happens after, of course, Pang was showing him he had picked one up, and he's trying to show Everest. He's like, "Oh, do you want to make a wish?" Kind of in a way, and instead of making a wish because he doesn't know what the whole idea or what's going on, he ends up eating the one that he gives to him.
Yeah, so that sets up,
But
you know,
then-
that's what they use to escape on.
But yeah, and then that's when they kind of show him the idea of making a wish, blowing the dandelion, get all the pieces, of course, to go everywhere, all the seeds and everything.
Yeah.
But then that's what leads into them, of course, escaping because he realizes, oh, look, I can go ahead and use this. Kind of the way we can.
Yeah, and
that's the way we use it that way.
so Yi and Peng, they escape with Everest on this thing.
Yes.
Jin
Unfortunately,
doesn't take the jump.
No.
So he says he'll meet up with him. He does get captured.
Yes.
And he finds out in the course of getting captured, though, that the doctor, the zoologist lady,
who seemed to be, of course, all nice, of course, at the beginning.
is actually a fraud. Like she's actually an animal dealer
Mm-hmm.
with the head of security,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's tricking the old man to try to get it so that they can make money off of it.
him. Yes.
And then they're going to get rid of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so he escapes.
Yes, he does.
Because she finally gets rid of the freaking mouse and tosses it, and he grabs the key,
Yep,
and then he
the old guy, the
little mouse.
mouse hamster like creature.
Yeah,
Because he started thinking it was, at first he thought it was really weird, and he was like, whatever. But he started liking.
But yeah, and you hear a little bit of the old guy's backstory, and you kind of, you know, he had it in his mind that this creature was attacking him. He waved off with his axe, and it's just disappeared, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But then everyone made fun of him. So I mean, he kind of became a little sympathetic at that point.
Mm-hmm.
That and the fact that, you know, again, staring up at the stars, like how you feel so small just looking up, and
Mm-hmm.
again, he had a very old timer feel to him, if that makes sense. Like just these old people who have these just amazing stories. You don't know if they're true or not,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, it's just blissful listening to that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually really started to enjoy his character at that point.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
You know, but then at that point, like the zoologist and the head of security guy, like at that point they pretty much, you know, became the cookie cutter, you know, villains. Like you kind of
Pretty much, yeah.
and you kind of saw it coming too.
Yeah, you did, truly.
Yeah, it wasn't this big reveal or big surprise.
No.
If you know these kind of movies, you know this is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, so he escapes. He wrecks the guy's bike.
That was funny.
Yeah, and they end up being blown all the way to the Gobi Desert,
Mm-hmm.
and they wander through there, trying to get to this village where they get to the river, Yangtze River, I think. It's either the Yellow or the Yangtze. I can't remember which. It's the Yellow or the Yangtze. And no, it's not the Yellow. It has to be the Yangtze because Yellow's in northern China. So Yangtze River to go to the Himalayas.
Yeah,
And
they're supposed to, of course,
meet
Jin
there. And
while
so,
they're there, that's when
but yeah, he told them, because not knowing at the time that they were bad, where they were going.
Yes, he already told them so. But that's when they also show up after that, once they knew exactly where they were going. And at that point, they're all around. Of course, they haven't found Jin yet. They thought they did at first, but it turned out to be just some old guy at that time. But that's when they're just pretty much racing, trying to escape at that point. And they end up at the river point at that time with all of them around.
In a motorboat, and then oh gosh, what's her name? Dr. Zara. There we go. She has this the vehicle they're in actually turns into a boat, and it's actually kind of cool. And this chase leads to one of the coolest scenes I've seen, like beauty-wise. Like I've seen really interesting animated scenes, but I mean this one, like in terms of just like how beautiful it was, how amazing to look at it was the coolest. Everest essentially has them go overland. It's this
Yeah.
little poppy patch, or I don't know if it's poppies, but it's some sort of flower.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost turns into like waves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super cool, like how it moves.
I mean, the further on it goes, I mean, it's definitely more prominent. You can actually see it. But at the time, before they actually go onto the land, I mean, they're pretty much being chased, of course, by Dr. Azara, of course, and the head of security. But they hit a point where it's almost like a dead end, if not a really sharp turn. And so they go onto land themselves, and then they, of course, Dr. Zara and
they just crash.
Tried to, but they just crash, and that was funny to see, of course, too. But then, of course, then you slowly start to, at first, see just how, because he's using his powers, how it's just slowly building up, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it's just huge.
Yeah, and eventually, it's this huge cresting wave, and it causes them to crash. Which unfortunately destroys her father's violin.
Mm-hmm.
So she has to go into the woods. She's kind of freaking out.
Yeah.
And she finally opens up about her feelings. Like she hasn't cried since her father died. She hasn't no real talking, and she realizes just how distant she's been with her family. Because I mean, you got that at the very beginning of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It was very, very distant. And so her and Jin talk. Like at some point, her and Ping talk about it. Like pretty much Jin is, the one who doesn't take leaps like that because, she was always getting in trouble, always trying new things, and he was the one who kind of had to stay back and make sure nothing bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of the whole bonding family thing.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, she comes back and he's fixed her guitar. Like the strings are broke, violin. There we go. And has restrung it with his own hair.
Yes.
And so now at this point, they have only one more stop to go, and that's the I forget what it's called, but it's a ginormous Buddha in Southeast Asia, when Buddhism was actually a prominent thing in like southern China.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at it, it's beautiful, and she wishes her dad was there.
Yeah.
And so Everest kind of opens the guitar case, and she starts playing.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's his hair, it grows these flowers all over it, and it just
it was able to pass the powers pretty much on to kind of within her violin while she's playing, so she's able to bring out this beauty all around them, and that brought the flowers onto everything, including the huge, massive Buddha that had been carved into that mountain that was there.
Yeah, and then we move from there. Like his powers are getting stronger, and they want to try to stop him before he actually reaches the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this bridge, and you can clearly tell where the Himalayas. Like it is snow everywhere. There's peaks. It's crazy.
Yeah. And
in crossing this bridge, like they're going to attack it, try to take it. At this point, there's still the kind of facade with the Dr. Zara character, but it breaks really fast. Like especially like when he remembers the actual incident, when he actually sees it. Like
when he originally first saw the Yeti, what he did.
Yeah, it was roaring, and he swung, and then it just sort of hummed away. But then noticed that he had it had three little kids around it. 3 little cublings, whatever, Yetiites, whatever you call a young Yeti.
It was there trying to protect its children.
And at that point, he's just like, I have to let it go.
Yep.
And so she finally breaks her facade, tranquilizes him, and then Everest just gets tranquilized all over the place. And there's a point where you think that like Yi tries to save him, and she eventually gets pushed off of the cliff, and she's not dead, but I mean the implication, story beat, like, and so while they escape, she climbs up, she has her violin, and she plays
Starts
it to
playing
try and to save Everest, and it wakes him up.
Mm-hmm.
He breaks out of
The cage
the
that they had
cage,
put him in, and then
of course they try to kill him. Like at this
Mhm.
point, it's just like the hell with all the money we'll get. We're just going to kill him.
Yeah, but then he ends up also stopping all of them too, because they may have got to the point where they ended up knocking her. I mean, she got knocked over, where you think, of course, she may have died or she would have gotten majorly hurt, but they ended up taking Jin and Ping.
Yeah, they're going to get rid of them later. Yeah.
And so he ends up going after them to get them back.
Yeah, and eventually they do hit him with a car. He goes into a snowbank, but it cracks the ice. It starts an avalanche, and they go off into the chasm. You know, obviously, children's movie doesn't want to go into that too much, but
No.
it's pretty obvious what happens.
Yeah.
It's a long way down.
And that would be, of course, Dr. Zarin and
the head of security guy. I forget what his name is. Yeah. And yeah, at that point, they go up to Everest. You know, the old man gives them the codes from there.
Before all that, I mean, at first, they're just like, oh my gosh, where's Everest? What happened to Everest? I mean, because he wasn't there after the snow, everything fell down. And then just all of a sudden, you see pops up, one eye kind of pops up there, and he's popping up out of the snow. And they're like, oh, okay, good. But then that's when.
Yeah, it was almost like an Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade moment there.
Mm-hmm.
If most people, if anyone here actually knows that reference.
But yeah, that's when the older guy, Mr. Burnish, does tell the other security guys that are there, technically still left,
to give them their codes.
They need to give them their coats. And you have the one scene with the one guy on there
who's just nothing in boxers.
Yeah,
it's just like they just wanted our coats.
Yeah, that part was funny too.
So yeah, then he goes on to Everest, and you know, there you meet his family.
Mm-hmm.
They're huge, and it's like the journey's over, and he's just like, no, it's not.
It's never over.
It's not over until it's over, and even then, who knows what happens after.
Indeed, and the picture that she had all along of her and her father inside of her violin case, he ends up.
Apparently, there was another
half of that, and he was able to bring that together, and it had both her mother as well as her grandmother on there, bringing them all together, and that was kind of signifying, of course, it's not over. You still have your family. There's still more to live for, technically, and be a part of.
Yeah, and so eventually they still hang out at the end. Like Everest goes home, and eventually Mr. Burnish sends them his old equipment, and just like, for your next adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was very beautiful.
Yep.
I enjoyed it. Again, some pacing issues at the beginning, and obviously character issues.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, you know, they all followed an arc, and it seemed like a natural progression for how short the movie was.
Yep.
So yeah, once again, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 because it was just beautiful. I think you should see this movie.
I would completely 100% agree. It was awesome.
All right, so that is our review of
Abominable.
Indeed. So next week is going to be Joker. I'm not sure who's going to be here.
Better be me, but
yeah, it depends on her health, and obviously, you know, the Casual House Plant's schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm coordinating with both of them at this point.
Yep.
So I will inform you more when I do my vlog here on Sunday or Monday. So until then, see ya.